Welcome to Complete Edition. This is episode 0. I'm your host, Compulsive Nerd. Some call me Compulsive, some call me Nerd. My real name is Cole. I don't really care what you call me. And I'm joined today by AJ or Mini Dude or AJ Plays. Is that right?
Yep.
And how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? How's your day been?
I've been pretty productive. I got up early today, around like 8. I mean, this is early for me, but 8:25-ish. And then I did dishes and made coffee, and I was like, all right, let's set up the PC. Totally did that. And then I actually had a problem. Like I needed to make my payment for my apartment, and I was like getting on the website and I just didn't understand what I was doing. So I called my cousin and he kind of explained it, and then that didn't go very well. So I went to the office and I was like, help me out with this. And they helped me. And then I was like, all right. So I played some Assassin's Creed and got ready for this podcast. It was a pretty fun morning.
Yeah, accommodation issues and like apartments and stuff can be so stressful. So I'm glad. I'm glad it's been productive.
Yeah.
You're always really punctual as well in terms of like, because obviously it's like way earlier for you than it is for me because I'm in the UK. So
right. And you know, I'm okay with early. I work pretty early for my job. Like I'm up at 7:25 every day, and I need to be at work by 9 a.m. and I'm pretty punctual with that. I'm like never late. And so like 8:25 is sleeping in, but it's also still early. Like there's so much that can get done when you're up at 8:25 in the morning. You know what I mean?
yeah, I used to. Yeah, there's been some times where I've just like had like a wild sleep schedule where like I wake up at like 4 a.m. like for some weeks, and it's weird because it can make you feel more productive to just be around so early, but then other times it just totally messes everything up. So
Yeah. Well, this is episode 0 of the podcast. It's not going to be the normal structure that we are going to have whenever we start episode 1. This is primarily for us to kind of build chemistry, give an idea where we came from with our gaming history and kind of how we've been achievement hunting or trophy hunting throughout our time with video games. And so we're probably going to, I think we should start with your history, because
Okay.
I've done my a podcast where I've done my own history before. This time it's going to be a lot better, I feel like, because I took notes. But I'm really excited to hear your history because, you know, we're
Yeah, this is the first time we're hearing it from each other as well, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
We get the live reactions, I suppose.
absolutely. So if you want to start with your, like, where things started for you.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first thing to like, I've been gaming for pretty much as long as I can remember, but I guess it's important to say I'm 23, so I don't have like knowledge of, like the Magnavox Odyssey or like anything, the Sega Saturn or anything like that. And everything sort of before around 2008 is pretty fuzzy for me because it's just so long ago into my childhood. But I remember I started with the PS1 and the PS2, and I used to play pretty much everything. I remember I used to get the PlayStation magazines and play the demo discs. I used to obsess over this like Italian Job game that had a demo disc, and I played all the classics from them, or at least what I consider to be classics from them. Crash Bandicoot, and then when I got a PS2. That was like my most played system by far growing up. So I played like Sly Cooper and Jack and Daxter and Beyond Good and Evil. And Beyond Good and Evil, one of my favorite games ever. I know everyone says like that series, it's like people demand a sequel, but no one played it. I was one of the guys who did. I played the original when it came out, and I loved that game. So
That's pretty badass.
yeah, and then so after those, I got an original Xbox, but it was always like a secondary system compared to the PS2. Like I played pretty much everything on PS2, but then I'd play stuff like Halo and Kung Fu Chaos on the Xbox, but not really use it for anything else. And I never got into Xbox Live, or I remember I uploaded some CDs onto the Xbox because you could do that, which was cool at the time. But I never sort of took advantage of like the Halo 2 multiplayer craze or anything like that. I think I was probably a bit too young. And then so from there, I got the Wii, like pretty much everyone, and Nintendo DS. But I I rarely use them. I think for the Wii, I mostly just played Wii Sports, honestly. And then, for the DS, I played, Nintendogs and Mario games and not much else. So I was definitely a PlayStation guy growing up in my sort of earlier childhood, and then probably Nintendo, and then Xbox third. Which it's weird to say now because now I'm sort of so much more into Xbox than
Right. That's what I
either
find
of
so
the other two
fascinating
platforms.
is the fact that like you start off as PlayStation and I did too, but like the diversion where you go down the path of Xbox is so fascinating, especially since you had like an original Xbox.
Yeah.
And you didn't utilize it. Like you said, you didn't play like Halo Online.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Combat Evolved and a couple of games, but it was just, it was like a side thing for me. It was just like, oh, whenever there's an Xbox exclusive, I'll just play that and that's it.
Right.
And then quickly go back to the PS2 to play like Lego Star Wars or whatever. Um, not even, just even third party stuff. But then, so I guess where it changed for me was in 2008. At Christmas, I got the Xbox 360. So the 360 launched in 2005. So by the time I got the 360, there was already like a few years of just great games for that system. So it was like, I don't know, it was like overstimulating in a way because there's just so much stuff to get to. Like I remember getting Gears of War 1 and Gears of War 2 with the system. I got Mirror's Edge. I had Dead Space. I had Bioshock. I had Halo 3. I had Guitar Hero 3. And it's just like completely overwhelmed with like all these next generation games. And the first game I played on it was Mirror's Edge. And I love that. So with Mirror's Edge, I love the art style of that game, the way like the colors pop and everything. And it was like such a good introduction to that system because it was so mind blowing coming from the PS2 to just have that, I don't know, that fidelity and that clarity in that game.
That is so
Um,
cool. I just recently played that. Like I got an Xbox Series X and it was the first thing I played because it was on Game Pass. And
right, yeah,
I really enjoyed it. If I had it on if I had the second one on PlayStation, I probably would have platinumed it. I was not hunting. I was just kind of getting my feet wet with the Xbox, and so I wanted to play some games that I had on my list, but I never touched them. And that is so cool that was like one of your first games, and that's kind of my introduction on the Xbox.
yeah. That game has, I mean, that game isn't an exclusive or anything,
No,
but it's aged so well as well. I think in terms of like how it still holds up
absolutely.
graphically because of the simple art style. And also because it's funny as well because the 360 and the PS3 they've been criticized for like the games they had at the time being like very grey and muddy and sort of like third person action games, like Gears of War. And so Mirror's Edge is like the total opposite of that in terms of color. So but yeah, so that was when I got my first achievements as well. I remember as well because I got Dead Space and Bioshock. I was still like, I was 12 years old at the time. So, and both of those games, the opening section of those games was the scariest part, in my opinion. So it was like back then when I was still, easily scared of horror and that sort of thing. I couldn't get past the opening of either game. Like it was too scary. I had to turn it off and then, like wait a couple of years to get back to it and get through it. And it's like Bioshock. I don't even think that game is that game's not really scary at all. It's just the opening where you're in the bathysphere. So yeah, it was and I'd played the 360 around a friend's house before I had one, but I'd only played I think Guitar Hero 3 and Halo 3 back then. A lot of the other games were completely new to me. But then after the 360, I ended up getting a PS3, but it became a secondary system. I really liked some of the features of the PS3. I really liked the web browser and things like that. It felt more ambitious, I think, as a console. I mean, there's the whole thing about the power of the cell and how expensive it was as well, of course. But I played stuff like Heavy Rain and Motorstorm and Killzone on PS3, but I didn't play much else. And I enjoyed it, but it was definitely the turning point where a lot of my friends got the 360, and that was when like Call of Duty 4 and Halo 3 and all these multiplayer games started coming, especially on Xbox. And so it just became, I guess I naturally sort of switched over at that point. And then I got the Xbox One at launch as well. I got it day one. You actually got an achievement for getting it day one. There was like a day one edition achievement for zero gamer score. It was quite weird. They also had achievements on like Netflix and stuff. It was really an odd time. Um,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it was. I mean, so during the especially the launch of the Xbox One, Xbox was definitely having a huge identity crisis. You know, they didn't know what they were doing. Don Matrick left before the console even launched because unveiling it was terrible. And all the Connect and the TV and the sports and like all of that stuff sucked. So it was, you know, like the dark ages of Xbox. And I wasn't really happy with the system. I didn't have the sense of wonder with the Xbox One initially. You know, it was okay, it was fine, but it wasn't exciting. It was bulky, it was quite ugly, it was overpriced, it was underpowered compared to the PS4. And I didn't hate the Kinect. I got a Kinect for the 360 as well. And I think there's some good games on it for what it does, but it wasn't anything new after the Wii. And a lot of the games for the Kinect were bad. Like, I don't think that the Kinect itself was terrible. I think the prioritizing it was bad. Like, it was the wrong direction to go in. Some of the games were good, but a lot of the games were just like so bad, like Fighter Within, and there was like this weird like Ubisoft fitness game and stuff, and I never got those, but it was just clear they weren't. I don't know. It was like a dead end for the platform beyond just like the Connect Sports and the Connect Adventures and stuff.
I remember it being really exciting. I would get in trouble in an agriculture class because I sat next to one of my friends and he had the Connect, and it was not exactly that the games that were exciting. It was just that tech at that time is like, there's no controllers, dude. I'm coming over. Like, let's play.
Yeah,
It was
it, it's sad to look back because we know now that none of it amounted to anything. Like it was the wrong bet to take. Basically, it was that, you know, Microsoft put a ton of money and investment into that, and they also got third parties to get behind it, and that must have taken a lot of resources. And now it's quite sad looking back because you know that like it wasn't the future. It wasn't, you know, anything big. But even like Mass Effect 3 had full Connect voice controls. Like you could control all the dialogue with your voice, and I don't know. It's quite painful to look back because it's like, you know, they were spending money on getting stuff like that when they could have been investing in first party, or there was so much more stuff they could have been doing that would have been better.
very true.
I think as well, like, yeah, you could snap stuff, and the UI was weird and bad, and it all got reversed. But you know, I got through it, and I think the Xbox One, to be fair, it had pretty good launch games. I think the PS4 started to pick up steam in sort of 2015, but Xbox One, it had Dead Rising 3 and Forza Motorsport Rise, which was pretty mediocre, to be fair. But you know, it had an okay launch lineup, all things considered. But just the console and the direction was bad.
Are you a big fan of Forza?
I've sort of dabbled in Motorsport, and it's okay. I think Forza Horizon is a lot better. I don't think either are my kind of game. I feel like with Horizon, I enjoy my time with it, and I respect it in terms of like I play it and I'm like, you know, the world is beautiful and the team that's made it is clearly immensely talented, but it's not a game where I want to get every achievement and do everything in, and it's a bit aimless as well. It's like a world that you just go in and you get other people to race against, and it's very you know, it develops quite organically the way you play that game. You know, there's like a lot of map markers and there's a lot of events that happen, and in like Forza Horizon 4 the seasons change every set amount of time, every hour I think, or something. And so I respect the game and I like the game, but it's not like I used to be into Burnout a lot, and some of the older Need for Speed games like Need for Speed Underground 2 and games like that. And I think I still prefer those to Forza, but I think Forza's still really good, and I'm excited for the next one, and I'll play it definitely. And yeah, so I played on the PS4 a decent amount, but not a ton. It was I don't really know. It's weird. Explaining my relationship with the PS4 is strange because I think Sony's first party is amazing. I think it's great. I guess maybe I just had less time and it was like I'm already dedicated to the Xbox One, but it was something where I never really got into the PlayStation again after the PS3. But that's without like I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way to the system or the platform or anything.
Right.
I don't have a PS5 at the moment, but I want one. And you know, I don't want one so much that I have like alerts on my phone for when some show up to order them. But if I see one, you know, I want to buy one and I want to play a lot of its games. But I've always been sort of Xbox and PC since sort of the 360, and I never got a Nintendo Switch at all or played on one at all. So, and uh, I, I know that you seem to not be a big fan of the Switch, so I guess this isn't the place for Nintendo people, I guess.
Absolutely not.
Uh, so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a few people have, you know, a hatred for Nintendo at the moment in terms of their software, and I understand why, and I understand they're doing a lot of pretty bad stuff, but also some great stuff, I think. Yeah, I sort of yeah, I don't hate them. I'm not angry at them. I think I did get a Wii U, and I think
Oh, wow.
that's my least used console ever. I think I played Nintendo Land, and then I think that was it. I think I played one game on it, and
Wow.
I still have the system. I got Wind Waker, and I played a little of that as well, but that was basically it. So yeah, after that, I was like, you know, I don't think I need a Switch because I'm just not really enthusiastic about. Yeah, I loved on the Wii. I loved Donkey Kong Country Returns though, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
Super Mario Galaxy and games like that.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I don't hate Nintendo. I just find that I'm less and less interested in their games. I mean, I'm excited for WarioWare, which they announced at E3. I played that on Wii, and now that there's one coming to Switch, it's like I already have talked with my friends. I'm like, we're having a party, we're gonna drink, and we're gonna play this dumbass game, and it's just like a good time. And Nintendo's good at that. They're good at like giving you a game that's a good time. But I don't think they make games that are like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and like 100% this. I'm not gonna sit here and just play for long extended periods of time. Even Zelda, like I got so bored of the Breath of the Wild, and that's like what I stand out for on Discord, you know? Like I just think the game's way overrated. Like I don't
Yeah,
find it
so
I don't find it to be like one of the best games of all time or the best ever made, but it's a 97 on Metacritic. Like,
yeah, so for me, I'll say that obviously I'm against judging games that I haven't played, right? Like
right.
that's the first thing. I haven't played Breath of the Wild, I haven't played Super Mario Odyssey, so I can't like, you know, if I did have an opinion on them, which I basically don't, then you should ignore it anyway because, you know, it's meaningless. But it was something where for me, they moved in terms of like the design philosophy. They moved in a direction that I am not a fan of, I guess, because for Breath of the Wild, that came out at a time where I became pretty sick of open world games. And that's not Nintendo's fault. That's, you know, more Ubisoft and, you know, a lot of other companies sort of pivoting into making open world games over and over again. And I know that, you know, you've always had in Zelda, you've always had like Hyrule and being like a hub. But something about Breath of the Wild, it was like, oh, well, you can really go anywhere and there's no order to it. Whereas for older Zelda games, I mean, some of like the DS Zelda games weren't even that open at all. And then there's other ones where like games like Twilight Princess, there's still like an order that you're pretty much supposed to do stuff in. Whereas Breath of the Wild, it was more open and it was like had, you know, all the weapon degradation stuff, and it was like I'm sure the game is amazing, but it's like they're not catering for me and for what I like, and that's not
Right.
their fault. That's just how it is. And it was similar with Odyssey because I always preferred like the more linear Mario games. Yeah, I love Super Mario Galaxy, and I love a lot of the DS games as well. But I was never hugely into like the collectathon type world design of like Super Mario 64 as
Yeah.
much. Even yeah, and so it was just like a personal taste thing where for both of their big flagship games, they chose to go in a direction where it's like I'm not that interested in either of these. Yeah, it was something I never got into, but I did get into PC gaming a little as well. I play on Steam and I play a ton of Counter-Strike. I think I've got 1,300 hours in that game.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's sort of, so I'd say it's probably Xbox then PC. Although on PC I only play like one or two games, and then yeah, it's probably then PlayStation third, and then Nintendo fourth in terms of my current sort of standings for where I spend my time in terms of gaming. Because I did get, that's the other thing about Nintendo. I did get a 3DS, and I really like A Link Between Worlds, and I remember there was a Resident Evil 5 or like a Resident Evil Mercenaries thing on there, and they were pretty good. So I enjoyed those. But yeah, I think that's everything in terms of everywhere I've played and all the systems I've owned.
That's
So thank you for putting up with that. And,
Oh,
listening to it.
absolutely. It was good to hear. Like it was cool cuz like the entire time, I kind of made notes and I'm like I'll discuss kind of where our gaming histories overlap and kind of like our similarities cuz it's interesting just how things go and I'm going to talk about mine in order of like console generations. So I'll start with Atari. My dad was big on Atari when he was a kid and he had one. And he showed me a couple games on it, like Pitfall, and I have no idea. Was it Space Invaders? Was that on there? There was like
I assume so.
all
You
these different
definitely
arcade games. And
go back further than me because yeah, for me I was like I'm an only child and I don't have like my parents never were into gaming. So like for me it like started with the PS1 and the PS2 and that was like it. So that's really
those
yeah,
were
that's
my
really interesting.
those were my big ones. See, I only played a little bit of Atari
Right.
because my dad was interested in that kind of like got me pushed in the game of or in like the direction of gaming. And then my dad also had an NES and my grandma kept it. When we would go over there for holidays or to visit, I would go to the basement and I would play Pac-Man or Contra and whatever else my grandma had, like little car racing games or motorcycle games, whatever. And I would just play them while I was at my grandma's. And then my aunt also had an NES and a Sega Genesis, and she was my babysitter. So when my mom went to work, I would go to my aunt's house and just play these all day long. And that would be, Mario, Zelda. I played Sonic. I played like, what was it called? NHL 94. Like that game was awesome. That was probably my favorite on Sega. I only played it not for hockey, but just because you could get into fights, and I just found that so fun. And I would play all these games visiting. But at my house, my first system was an SNES, and it was passed down to me from my brother. And that's how like my whole gaming history is until I'm old enough to kind of get on my own. Is my brother would get something new, like when he got the PS1, I got the SNES, like he would pass down what we had. And I totally missed out on the GameCube and the N64. Those are generations I never touched. And I played PS1 a lot. That's where the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games were. And actually this is a fun little story. My very first PS1 console exploded, like sparks.
Oh no.
Everything. It was crazy, but we had like a deep freeze in the state of Kansas in like 2000, and one of the power lines snapped and it sent a power surge right like through the home, and PS1 couldn't handle it and it just exploded. Like it was nuts. But we ended up getting another one, and my brother got the PS2, so I just would play PS1 games, and I played a lot of sports games. My dad would play PS1 games with me. He would play like military shooters. There was this game called Spec Ops, and we would play that a lot together. I have a deep library of games, but I played a lot of demos. Holy shit. I never played like anything mainstream. I played a lot of sports stuff, and like I'd go to the rental store and I'd try to get mainstream stuff, but we had to return it, so I'd like never finish them. So a lot of my gaming history with like the early stuff is just I was too young.
Oh
I
yeah,
was just
yeah. For the early stuff, like the earliest stuff, I said my memory sort of blurs together, but also I had no idea what I was doing in terms of like memory cards and saving games sometimes. So it would be that I remember there'd be some games where I would basically just start the whole thing over like every time I was doing a new play session. Like I don't know, I was that young that it was like and sort of the only person gaming in my family that it was just had no idea what was going on, so I can definitely empathize with that.
Same here, and you know, I'm so lucky because I haven't mentioned my age. I'm 25, so I'm only 2 years older than you, and I just got lucky from the people in my life who had the game, like the older systems before me, so that I could play them and I could get that kind of history, you know, and I think it really molded like my gaming life, really, because everyone around me was just passing games down to me. And I also had a Game Boy, and you know, when you mentioned DS, I was like, oh, I totally forgot about the DS. Like, I played that on the bus with like people, and you know, I didn't have any pets, so we had the Nintendogs game. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. I
You
played that too. I had the Dash Hound one, I think.
Yeah, and you could like on the bus, you could like playpen, so other people's dogs would like be in the same playpen as my dogs, and we'd just like hang out. It was crazy. It was like what a bizarre time. But like that was pretty cool. I played Game Boy a lot. That was like when we would go shopping and I was like 5 years old or whatever. I'd just sit in the cart and play Game Boy. And you know, I asked my mom, like Game Boy was the first thing that kept me up at night, like video games that kept me up at night. And I asked her like, "Hey, did you know that I was under the covers like playing Game Boy?" And she was like, "Absolutely." And in the morning when you would complain about getting up, I would just say it was your fault. You stayed up late. You had to learn your lesson. So that's how it was. And I was like, awesome. Like my mom never confiscated my Game Boy for me playing under the covers or anything like that. And I still have my Game Boys. I have the Game Boy Blue and I have the Game Boy Color, but it was like the clear purple one. I have the Game Boy SP. I never got the Advanced, but I played the Advanced. I played my friend's Advanced. And
Yeah, I think I had one Game Boy, and I don't remember which one. But again, it's something where it's like I know the transition to the DS was like my first handheld gaming experience.
I eventually transitioned all the way to Vita, even to Switch. I'm borrowing a friend's Switch. That's like the only way that I'm gonna play Switch games. I'm not gonna own one, not unless the Pro comes out and it's like really really special. I just borrow it and I borrow the games and I'm like, all right, here you go, have it back. I want a disclaimer on Zelda. I only played for like 5 hours before I was like, all right, my weapons are breaking. I'm like, the world is too open for me. I don't know what I'm doing. I went down into a dungeon. Or a shrine or whatever, and I got some extra powers and I got the loop and I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't know. I wanted more linearity. I wanted somewhere to go. I wanted like a story told, and I was not getting that. I played on Wii. I played one of the Zeldas at my cousin's house. They got stuck and I was going there for a weekend. And we played the shit out of it. I don't remember what it was called. It might be Skyward Sword.
There might be some others as well.
Yeah, Skyward Sword. I'm pretty sure it's Skyward Sword because it was like motion controls and we just played the shit out of that game. I really loved it. I think that's the way Zelda should be. Like, that was really, really fun.
Yeah, I played a ton of Twilight Princess, and it was like the way you'd use the Wiimote, you'd use it to like swing the sword, and it would feel really sort of, I don't know, it'd feel more visceral to do it that way.
Absolutely.
It was good, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's like, I'm right with you on the Wii. I played a lot of the Wii Sports on there. We played WarioWare. It was a console that was like more for family. Super Mario Galaxy, Mario Kart. You know, we played a lot of that stuff with the Wii, and I never went up to Wii U. It kind of just, that was such a flop. I didn't spend my money on it, and that's like kind of where I jumped into the PS3 generation. I didn't have an Xbox 360 until after high school, where this guy was selling it pretty cheap with a bunch of games, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to have that in my collection of consoles that I have, because I still have the SNES, the PS1, 2, 3, 4 Pro. Like, I have all the PlayStations pretty much, PSP, PS Vita. And that's kind of where I was at. I'm all over the place. But I did upgrade from DS to PSP, and I played that in like middle school with my friends. And then I upgraded eventually to Vita. And that sat around for a long time until I kind of got into podcasts beyond and like things like that, where people were actually playing Vita and like telling me what to play. PS3 was my brother had one at launch. Like, he got one at launch, and I used to play it when he was at work, or when he went to college. When he went off to college, he kind of left it for a while, and then he came back and got it. And that was like, I was 13 years old, and it was the first console that I saved up for, because my parents, like at 13, they were like, we're not saving or we're not buying you video games anymore. Like, that's all on you. And so I went out and I bought my PS3, and I used some of my friends to like figure out what to play because there were so many options. I was doing like the bundle, and I got like Infamous. I borrowed Infamous from one of my friends. He said, get all the games, or he's like, get games that I don't have so that you can play it. And that was my introduction to Uncharted, which is still like it's the game that got me hardcore into trophy hunting. Like, that is the game. Games became so much more after that. When on PS2 I used to play Prince of Persia and God of War, but those were borrowed from friends, and I never completed them because I was young. I don't even know if I should have been playing them, but on PS3 I really did know what I was doing now. I got Uncharted with my PS3 as a bundle. That's whenever I like fell in love with PS3, and I just borrowed every game I could. It's not my first platinum trophy, I don't believe. I think something else is. But I used to play on my brother's account and on my brother's PS3, and it didn't have trophies. Like, it was the time before trophies had even become a thing. And
Right.
so
Yeah, I always forget that happened. That it was
yeah, Xbox was like leading the way with that. And I would go over to friends' houses and play Xbox. Like, that's where I first played Assassin's Creed 1. My eyes were open to like so many more things. I used to play Halo at my friends' houses. We'd play COD at my friends' houses. So I would always be like over at a friend's playing Xbox 360. But when I was at home, I was playing the Sony PS3 games, and I was having a freaking blast with Infamous and Uncharted. Like you said, the first party just was it has always been good with Sony, and that's kind of what I did at home. But whenever I went away, I would play multiplayer. The most active gaming period in my life for sure is the PS4 generation. During the PS4 generation, I built a PC. I didn't use it very much. I used it for Witcher, and then Witcher 3 is my favorite game like ever, and I eventually just bought it on PlayStation just because I wanted the platinum. Like, I want my favorite games platinum. I just wanted that so bad. I played BioShock on PC, and I started picking up all these indies on Steam, and I was playing those on PC, Bastion, and things like that. And I wouldn't say I'm a big PC gamer. It's probably third on mine. I probably play Xbox more. PS4, yeah, definitely like where I began trophy hunting, and I played a lot of games. I think I have like 279 games in my PlayStation library, and I haven't platinumed all of them. There was like a period at the beginning of PlayStation 3 when trophies were active, and I was not into it. Like, I got a couple of platinum trophies, and then I would just play games. And so when you look through my trophies, you'll see like a bunch of games where it's like 1% or like 20%, something like low, where I just was like playing them and moving on. And I stopped doing that. I like my completion numbers high because
oh god, there's so many early 360 games that have terrible achievement lists that are just like notoriously bad. And there's so many games where I've got like one achievement from when I had no idea what I was doing, and I can't go back and complete them. So
I know, same here. And they're like blocked off by like multiplayer trophies or something. It's like
yeah, like Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, which has an achievement to be number one in the world, like number one on the global leaderboards, and it's like I'm never gonna complete it. It's
that
just
makes
never gonna
me
happen.
rage. That is horrible. That's why I haven't played Fall Guys. Like, I'll play it on like a separate account, but like on my main account, I don't. If I don't want a trophy hunt, then I'm not gonna play the game there. I'll just buy it on a different account and play it there.
Right. For the 5 wins in a row trophy.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely dumb. That's ridiculous. Yeah. I thought we'd grown out of that stuff, and we still haven't. I don't understand.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. So during the PS3, I played Infamous and Infamous 2, and I loved them, and I played Uncharted as well. I really, really love Uncharted 2. The first one didn't blow me away so much, and I think part of that is I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Uncharted 2, but the other thing is that I'd played Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb like way back, and I'd also played Tomb Raider Legend, which came out I think a year or two before Uncharted. So it was interesting and good, but it wasn't like masterpiece tier compared to those other similar games. But then Uncharted 2 came along, and it was mind blowing. At least, that's my opinion on those games.
Right.
So I did, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about Sony's first party, even in the PS3 generation, which can be considered like one of their worst, if not their worst generation. They still put out just great games.
Right. Which is why, like, I have a friend who's very uh, PC master race, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna play any Sony games. But then he talks shit. He talks shit, and he's like all over Nintendo games. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's the same thing. The both of them have good first parties that put out good first party games. It's like, why are you so big on Nintendo but not Sony whenever they make really good games too? It's like, I don't understand. But just that PS4 generation was huge. Like PS3, it felt weird because only two of us at school had the PS3. The rest of our friends had Xbox 360s. And like, that guy stayed my best friend and has been my best friend since 5th grade, I think. So we've been friends for over 10 years, and like always played games together on PS3. We would talk about it at lunch and during seminar and things like that. He's never been into trophy hunting though.
Yeah, it's none of my school friends were either. It's definitely still like a fairly niche thing in my sort of I don't know, real life gamer, I don't know, experience and friendships. It's usually just me that's into that stuff. I think for a lot of people, it's like if it's a game that they really, really love, then they might go and get achievements and trophies. But even then, it's like I know people that have played. They like love one game and they've probably played like 500 hours of it, and they still don't have like a bunch of really easy achievements that you could just get like by going out of your way for like 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
And it's like, for me, that would drive me insane. Like there's no way I could ever do that if there was like a game that I love and play all the time. It's like that's like one of the first things I'd do is get those like easy missables or just easy side achievements.
That's what I've been doing on Xbox, like with Game Pass. I was telling you about how I was playing Mirror's Edge, and on Mirror's Edge 2, I just like jumped into the achievements, which, by the way, I love the achievement setup system. It's very nicely structured, and it's so pretty on the side, and the sounds are great. It's something that I'm not used to, because whenever I was at my friend's house, we weren't popping achievements. We were just playing multiplayer, or I wasn't paying attention to achievements. And I will, like on Mirror's Edge, I would just be like, oh, what's this? What's this achievement? Oh, all I have to do is like run up this wall, jump around, like slide, and I'm like, all right, I'll just do that. Took me 2 seconds and I popped the achievement. Like it's just something fun to do after you've completed a game, or if you like the game enough. That's what I'm kind of excited, because I've never played Gears. I did play Halo, but like not all the way through, not beginning to end on campaigns or at a friend's house, nothing like that. It was always multiplayer or something like that. So I'm currently on Game Pass. I'm just I beat Halo 1. I don't like Halo 1. I think it's old, and I get what it did for the time, but I just couldn't vibe with it. Halo 2 I'm having a lot more fun with though.
Yeah, I think Halo 1 is probably the game where we will disagree the most. I can't imagine another game. I don't know, maybe I have some Sony hot takes somewhere, but Halo 1 is my favorite Halo campaign. So for me, that's like that's the best one. But I know that I remember in Discord seeing that you were having a bad time with it, which, I understand. It's always hard to, it's like you can't put the genie back in the bottle in terms of, like, I played Halo 1 years and years ago, and I've replayed it so many times that it's
Right.
like I can't go back to a time where, like, I can't remember what it was like experiencing it for the very first time in terms of, like, how I felt about everything. It's like, and every time I replay it, it's like I already know everything in the game, or most of the things in the game, so it's like it's hard for me to sort of see it any other way, if that makes sense. I feel like everyone has those games if you've been playing games for a long time, like, Half-Life
Absolutely.
or Doom or something, where it's like you played Doom back in like the late 90s or whatever, and then you'll always just see it as this great thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm that way with Uncharted. I've chilled a lot on Uncharted, but like when people used to badmouth Uncharted, I was like a fanboy. Like I'd be like, fuck you. It's like the best game ever. Like what are you saying? You can't do that. And Now I'm like, I get it if you don't like it, but for me, yeah, like when you were talking about how it wasn't mind blowing, Uncharted 1 wasn't mind blowing to you. For me, it was like I'd roll around in that puddle for like 10 minutes, and I like got my parents, and I was like, look at this, his clothes are wet, his clothes are wet. It's a video game, and like look at the graphics, it's crazy. And I just was like freaking out, and that's something that like can't be re-experienced. And for the time, I think that it was super awesome, and like the storytelling was really great, and I was like, this is what I want from video games. And that's kind of where I want to talk about Halo, is like I am one of the people who is not gameplay is king. I know that that's kind of dumb because it's a video game and you're supposed to interact with it and stuff, but I think that interactive storytelling is like the highest form of storytelling that you can get. I want good gameplay, absolutely, there's no doubt about that, but I want more story. And Halo, you had to really dig on Halo 1. You really had to dig for it, and I was digging. I was finding the lore, and I was like, why is this so boring? Why is this so generic? And then Halo 2 has gotten a lot better. I really like Halo 2 a lot more.
Yeah, Halo 2's story and its cutscenes are considered like
High
the peak
budget.
of the series compared to the other games. I think
Yeah.
for most people, yeah, I definitely think for me it's sort of the opposite where I'm more into gameplay focused games rather than the story. There'll be some games I don't do it on like a first playthrough, but there's plenty of games where it's like I just want to skip the cutscenes and just go to the gameplay. So yeah,
That's so interesting.
you know, I can understand your perspective because Halo is light on story and a lot of the story is through the gameplay, but not, I don't know, not in like the most creative way
Right.
possible or anything. And it was good for the time, but storytelling wasn't a focus back then, especially for first person
Not at all.
shooters.
And I tried to look at the game through the lens of the time period, because I will never just be like, this game is trash. I'm like, I look at it where it came out, where it was, and like what it did. And there's no denying like what Halo did. Halo, set the precedence for COD. Like it did so much and it was so good, but it's just like not my kind of game, and I couldn't get into it. And I did play it all the way through, and I was happy that I did that. But that definitely is a game where gameplay is king, where
Yeah,
you gotta really
Halo
love it.
Halo 1 as well. It's got like such a crazy legacy in terms of as a game because it was like a lot of people say, and I think I have to agree. I mean, maybe you could make an argument for Wii Sports, I guess, but Halo Combat Evolved was probably the most important launch title of any console ever. Like it was so important to Microsoft and to Xbox in terms of what it did. It was like arguably the best game on the original Xbox was the game it launched with, which is it's kind of crazy to think about it like that. I mean, I think it's got, and I know I don't take Metacritic too seriously, but I think it's got like a 97 on Metacritic or like a 98 or something.
That
And
one
it's
I
like
might agree with. I might agree with that because it's for what it did. I think for what it did, that's really awesome. Zelda doesn't deserve it that high.
yeah, I mean it's like it's so impressive, but I don't know, you could spin it in a bad way as well, right? Because it's like Microsoft since then, like they haven't been able to produce anything better, and even like Sony haven't in terms of sort of the critical impact of a game on its launch. Like it was just so important to Xbox that it's also difficult to disconnect that from views on the game now. I suppose it's sort of like the original Half-Life in terms of PC gaming, in terms of for Valve's history and Steam and
Right.
stuff like that. Where it was like and that game having like that intro where you're on the tram and you're getting like story told to you, but you're still in gameplay and like that and with Halo obviously with like the two gun system and a lot of the enemy AI and a lot of the more open-ended level design and you weren't like, I mean, this Halo wasn't the first game to do this, but you weren't like looking for keys to put in doorways, like like the red key for the red door and stuff like that. Stuff that Wolfenstein and Doom was doing a few years earlier.
I
It
was
was
gonna
like the
mention that.
first, it's like right. It was like the first time where it was like a real, like it was like a generational leap in terms of what first person shooters were doing, but also it wasn't just that leap. It was that it was executed so well as well. It wasn't like super janky and like, this needs to be refined in terms of the gameplay. It was like the core was there for the first real time, I think. So yeah, I mean, it's tough to talk about it because it's so, it's such a big game that it's quite polarizing as well
It's
in that
actually
sense.
it's so fascinating, and I wanted to ask you this, like, what do you think? You mentioned that Halo, it kind of carried Xbox. It made Xbox what it is. Like, what do you think it was about PlayStation that carried it? Because I can't like put my finger on like specifically one thing, but like PS1 and PS2 were huge. I mean, excluding the DVD drive on PS2 that everyone bought it for.
Yeah,
JRPGs maybe? Like,
it's weird because I mean, I can't say anything about the PS1 because I was honestly too young for it. But I know they got a lot of sort of traction from Nintendo and JRPG support and stuff like that. I think PlayStation are interesting because they've got like I honestly don't think, I mean, maybe you could say Kratos, right? But
I was
they've
thinking that.
made they've not really got like a Master Chief or a Mario.
Tomb
You know,
Raider?
yeah, I mean, I
Like
think
Lara
it's
Croft?
weird. It's weird because I feel like the PS1 and the PS2, I often think about stuff like Sly Cooper and Jack and Daxter and Crash
Mm,
Bandicoot and a lot of like mascot platformer type um,
yeah.
games. And then for the PS3, it was like more cinematic games, like Heavy Rain and Uncharted and The Last of Us. And then that sort of continued into PS4, I think, for the most part.
I want
So
to
yeah, I think they can't be pinned down as much as the other the others in the big three.
I want to sit down and have a podcast with you another day when I finish Gears, and I want to do like a comparison of Gears and Uncharted because that's a debate that I'm not a part of because I have no experience with Gears, but a lot of people will say like Gears is better than Uncharted, and we can maybe take it installment by installment. So like Uncharted 1 versus Gears 1. I don't know
Yeah,
if they're the
yeah,
same time.
that'd be good. I mean, I don't think I understand why the comparison exists, but I don't think they're all that similar games. Like I don't, and I think they do different things well to each other. So yeah, that'd be a really interesting discussion. Um,
Hell yeah.
I I feel like we've gone off on a tangent, but I don't know if you want to talk about
Yeah, we'll get
achievement hunting and
yeah,
trophies and
we'll get right back to that because I already finished with my history kind of like the PS4 and the PC, those were like intertwined, and then PS5 and Xbox
yeah,
Series X. This is the most balanced generation that I've ever had, which is really fun because I own both consoles for the first time, and my PC has gone to the wayside. It's more for editing, for trying to be productive, school or whatever, and my I'm super excited about both consoles, but I haven't been achievement hunting. And, respectively, as we've talked through our histories, you could see that, like, I'm way more on the PlayStation side. I do trophy hunting and you do the achievement hunting. Kind of, I want to go back to your history and where it started.
yeah. So for me, I didn't like. I thought achievements were cool when I got my Xbox 360, but it was like I was focused on the games and not like the metagame of achievements. So it was a few years until I got into achievement and trophy hunting, I think, or at least a decent amount of months. It was something where when I got my 360, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I played like as many games as possible, and I didn't really care if it was like ruining my completion percentage or anything. I played like Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six Vegas and games like that I'm never going to go back to probably. Um, but then I played. I think it may have been, and I think I played this on PlayStation instead of Xbox. That game X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really liked it, and also it has a really easy trophy list. So I think I got my first either completion or platinum or one of my first with that game, and I think that may have been the one that like spurred me to get more. But it's been a very gradual process where it's only recently where I'll try and complete almost everything that I play. I think it sort of started off where I didn't really care at all, although I thought it was cool. And then it became something where I would do it if I love the game and I'd do it to challenge myself. Um, but even then, it was like I'd be happy to get like 800 gamer score and then move on. You know, like it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
get above 500 and then like you're good, basically. Um, but then like towards the end of like the Xbox One generation, towards like mid to the late gen, it's been something where I try and for pretty much almost everything I play, I try to get most stuff. If I'm playing a game and I'm like, right, I've played it for like 20 hours or 30 hours and I'm miserable and I need to play it for like another 100 hours to get the completion, I'll drop it. I won't put myself through that. But for for most games I'll stick it out, and I remember during the 360 I would buy like it was when I'd start to buy some, I don't know, not amazing games, but games that had either easy or good achievement lists. So I have this game, and it was a mistake to get it. I have this game, it's called Secret Service, and it's a really bad first person shooter, but it has like an easy achievement list, but it was like an easy achievement list for like 2010 or 2011 or something, which still means it takes like 8 hours to get all the achievements. Because
Wow.
back then it was like the only the easiest games were like games like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and stuff like that
Yeah.
would still take you like 6 hours to get everything done in them. Whereas now it's like easy achievement and trophy games are like 10 minutes or like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like it's been like a crazy, I guess, inflation and you know,
Yeah, they
it's not a good thing.
No, not at all.
But,
I
but
hate that because like I have a couple of them on my list. I'm totally ashamed of them. I'm trying to make more of a quality list now, like instead of going for those, cuz you're right, it causes inflation and it's no good, and I'm falling guilty to this several times now. But on PlayStation, when you have a PS4 game and you bring it to PS5 and it pops all the trophies at once, I've done it like 2 times specifically because I know I could do it again, and I just don't want
yeah.
to spend the time to do it again. And then there's also like with Final Fantasy VII, I do not want to replay it on hard. Like there are cutscenes in the game at the end where when you die, you cannot skip them. So you're sitting there for like 30 seconds and then
Oh, I
a
hate
minute, and then I'm like, please. And then between the minute and 30 seconds, there's like 15 to 30-second clips of like them transitioning to the next part. And I'm like, I can't skip this. And I'll get through 3 parts and then I'll die. And then it sends me all the way back to the beginning. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing that again.
No,
I'm not
yeah,
fucking
that
doing it again.
sucks. That
And
sucks.
so
That's
I feel bad for popping the platinum for the second time because I didn't earn it. But I'm excited that I get to play the Yuffie DLC because that's the reason that I did it. Like, I just want to play the DLC, and the lists aren't separate, so it didn't fuck my completion percentage. And honestly, this is something we were talking that you and I both love is like our completion percentage and keeping it up. And that's why I was buying those platinum games. It wasn't to inflate my platinum or those 10-minute, 30-minute platinum games. It was not to inflate my platinum number. It was to inflate my completion rate because of all of the games that I fucked whenever I was just starting and I was just playing, like getting one trophy or one achievement and then moving on. So I was like, oh, I'll just balance it out. And I was doing New Year's resolutions, and I do this now every year. I do like a New Year's resolution. I'm like, oh, I want to get to 82.35% this year. And the first time I did it, I was like 0.5% away from my goal, and so I bought like 4 or 5 of those games, and I just knocked it up. I knocked up that completion percentage just a little bit to reach my goal.
yeah, no, that makes sense. You've reminded me of like 3 things at this point. I don't even know what to focus on. But so the problem with the inflation that I mentioned is that it used to be with Xbox Live arcade games, they used to only be able to give you 200 gamer score. Like if you did everything in an arcade game, you'd get 200 points. Whereas if you do everything in like a AAA game, you get 1,000 points. So that I think was a good system. But then there were some arcade games that are like way harder than AAA games. And it's like also it sort of implies that arcade games are like lesser than other games, which I think is probably a bad, I don't know, a bad attitude to have. There's some
I
indie
agree.
games that are better than plenty of AAA games. So then they bumped it to 400 points for indie games and arcade games, and then also back during the 360 generation, indie games and arcade games were like they were called separate things. Indie games didn't have like any achievements, and they were so it was a weird system all around.
That was during the time of like digital games, where it's like, oh, it's a digital game, so it's not considered like a real game yet, you know?
Yeah, so yes, but then with the Xbox One, they changed everything to have 1,000, and so that's where some of the problems came from. And then the other thing I wanted to say is about how so on Xbox Series consoles, you can't stack the lists, but you could stack the lists between the 360 and the Xbox One. Like, I know it's I think Xbox made the better decision than PlayStation, because we've seen there's a lot of issues with transferring from PS4 to PS5 for some games. Like, it's awkward in the UI to find it, and it's like also some save transfers haven't worked. They didn't work for Maneater. They didn't work for Yakuza Like a Dragon. They're not working for Doom Eternal now that Doom Eternal's got its next gen patch. Whereas on Xbox, it just all like seamlessly does it. And the reason it does it is because it's considered the same. Like, from my understanding, it's considered the same game. Like, it's got the same ID in terms of just the way it identifies it. It's the same thing. There's not two separate achievement lists, or it doesn't look like two separate SKUs. You can't download both versions, for example. Like, for the most part, unless it doesn't support smart delivery, and it's a weird third party thing. Sometimes that happens, but for the most part, like, if you download like Sea of Thieves on Series X, you don't get the option to download the Xbox One version or the Series X version. You just download the one version, and it will do it for the console that you're on.
Yeah.
And so it's good, but what it means is that you can't double up your gamer score on it. You can't like do the same game again because it's the same list.
I think the reason that it's like that on PlayStation is specifically because of the Vita integration of trophies. And they were gonna do PSP, but with the jailbreak, they were like, nah, that'll totally like fuck the system like completely. It's already fucked, but it would make it so much worse if people were just jailbreaking and popping platinums like with a press of a button, like in a second. And so there's like that cross. You could have a game on Vita, like Tearaway, and then you could go to PS4 and play it and get the trophy list of that on PS4.
Yeah.
So it built like that, and Xbox never had that kind of subsystem, so it kind of was just one or the other. Or it's like one in the same system.
Yeah, so back during the transition from 360 to Xbox One, it did have separate lists. Like, I remember, and I'm kind of glad they didn't do this again, because it probably would have made my backlog like even more annoying and insurmountable, because I found that I would go back and I'd like get all the achievements on the 360 version of a game and then go and do it on Xbox One and just do it all over again. Like, I did it for Call of Duty Ghosts, I think, which was like a launch title for Xbox One or close to launch. And then I did it for The Evil Within as well. I did it on 360, and then I did it on Xbox One, and I got the list again.
You got both of them? Wait, did you did you earn both of them? Or did you...
I did it.
Holy shit!
I did all the TLC as well.
Oh my god, that's amazing! That was like one of the hardest platinums for me. Like Evil Within, and you did it twice.
Yeah,
holy shit!
It's a tangent, and I don't know. Maybe it's a bit console war-y, but I've noticed. So when Microsoft bought Bethesda, I noticed there's a lot of people that, like, a lot of Xbox fans that didn't care about Bethesda at all, who now like pretend like they've always loved them and they like their games are like the best.
Yeah.
And then there's the opposite, right? Where there's like a lot of PlayStation fans that were like super into Bethesda, but now pretend like they always sucked or whatever, like they hate them and that their games are terrible, right? So that there's like the two sides of like people like flipped their opinions on them, and then there's people like Colin Moriarty, who he was never into Bethesda games, and he's still not particularly into them for the most part. But for me, it's like the opposite, where like I was really into The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2 and Doom Eternal and the first Wolfenstein game I loved. I didn't really get into the others, but
Yeah, I
then
I played the
also
second.
in terms of my completions, I've got the completion for the Evil Within. I've got it for the Evil Within 2. I've got it for Doom. I've done everything except the multiplayer stuff in Doom Eternal. I've got the first Wolfenstein game. I've got everything in that. I've got the expansion for the Wolfenstein game and everything in that. And then I've got all the achievements in Prey, all the achievements in Dishonored, all the achievements in Dishonored 2, all the achievements in Fallout 3, all the achievements in Fallout New Vegas, all the achievements in Skyrim, almost all the achievements in Fallout 4. So for me, it was like a huge moment because genuinely have, and you know, people can look up my gamer card or whatever, you know, and also, you know, all the achievements are dated, so it was like way before any of this happened.
Right.
I was really into their games. So for me, it was huge. And then you hear about other people where it's like they don't care at all. And then there's the other group of people where they like pretend they don't care, but they really do. And then the people that pretend they care, but they actually don't, like it doesn't matter to them. So yeah, that's been like Bethesda have been like a huge part of the achievements I get. And actually, I think their lists are better for the most part than Xbox first party, because you mentioned Gears of War. The Gears of War games like notoriously have terrible achievement lists in terms of the amount of time they take to get all the achievements. They're like a complete nightmare. You'll beat the game and you'll get like 200 points out of 1,000, and then what's even worse or better depending on how you look at it is for Gears of War 4 and Gears 5, they add expansions like every couple of months that add like another 250 points on, and
Oh.
some of them are timed. Overwatch does this as well.
Oh.
Um, and Microsoft do that with a ton of their games, a ton of their first party games, and Bethesda don't. So, like as an achievement hunter, the first party from Xbox, there's a lot of like really really hard lists. Master Chief Collection is another one where they just kept adding to it, and they kept adding to Sea of Thieves, and they kept adding to Forza Horizon, and all these games where it's like you have to make those games like your main game, and even when you get the completion, you have to like be ready to come back and do they added like a battle royale mode to Forza Horizon 4, and then they added a bunch of achievements for it. So it's like, well, got to go back to Forza again. Um, and you know, it's good that they add content and they make it free. Like I think that's really good. But in terms of being an achievement hunter, it's kind of a nightmare because you're like fuck, I just got done with this, and now you've added an achievement that might be like this achievement might be like 3 times harder than anything else that was in the game previously, and now you've got to go and do it, and you know when you first looked at the list it wasn't there. So yeah, so that whole thing is a nightmare.
I just I just noted down like for a later episode, we're definitely going to talk about those pet peeve achievements, because that's definitely one for me. Like I'm playing the DLC on Assassin's Creed right now. Like that's what I am doing, and they added a challenge mode, and I was like, fuck that, I'm not going to get them. And then I looked at them and I started to do them. I'm like, all right, these are fun. These are really fun. I'm gonna go for it. And I will say like fuck it to certain achievements. Like I didn't get the speedrunning achievement in Little Nightmares recently. It's just too
I have
much.
that one.
I know you do. I'm so jealous. I have mad respect for that, because it's if it was separate, that achievement specifically, if it was separate, like if it was speedrun separately and don't die separately, I would do it. But this is one where it's like speedrun and don't die, and whenever you're speed running, you make mistakes.
Yeah, well, that's also a game where you die in, you know, you effectively die in one hit to everything,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no like, oh, you know, it grabbed you but it didn't kill you. It's like, oh, if it grabs you, you're dead. Like that's it.
Yep. And so I gave up on that.
Yeah,
Which it doesn't happen often. Doesn't happen often, but I hate when games add trophies that are later added. I mean, I love game support afterwards, after the fact, but I hate when they're trophies that are just like so much harder than anything else in the game.
Yeah, there's somewhere they do the opposite as well, where they patch the game to make it way easier, and I always feel bad for the people and sometimes myself if like I did it the hard way, and then they're like, oh, well, here you go, it's like really easy now.
That happened
And
to me
you're
on
like,
Returnal recently.
You're like, what the fuck? Yeah, so um I think the Evil Within 2, I think they added, like, they were like, and this was a really weird update because it came like years later, I think, and I might be wrong, but they were like, oh, hey, like, yeah, you can just have like infinite ammo now on like the hardest difficulty. They're like, ah, fuck it, like, here you go. And
Oh
it's
my
like, what?
gosh.
Like,
Oh man.
yeah, so that game isn't anywhere near as hard as the first game to complete, so it's fine, whatever. But it was like it's always a bit, and like you're like, okay, cool, but you know, I thought the challenge level was pretty good in the first place. So
Okay, and then I kind of want to finish this off with like you mentioned that you wrote or you have wrote some achievement guides. Is that right?
yeah, so only a couple. So I I wrote a couple of community guides on the website True Achievements, which I really recommend. True Achievements is like the best achievement website. I know PSM Profiles is great for trophies and power picks and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
True Achievements is great for achievements if anyone's interested in that.
True Achievements is so good. Like even on PlayStation, I use True Achievements because sometimes True Achievements will have guides up for trophies or achievements that are not up on the PlayStation side. Like Power Picks won't
Yeah,
cover it or PSN Profiles won't cover it. And so I just go to True Achievements.
their community is fantastic, and they've got like there's some people who write full game walkthroughs on there, and they've got news on there like related to Xbox, and they've got all the information about like the sales that happen on Xbox. It's like the perfect Xbox site basically, even beyond achievements. But it's so
Right.
good for achievements, and it has great stat tracking and stuff like that. So I wrote a couple of guides, one for Dark Souls 2. And then one for this like motorbike game. I don't remember the name of it, but it was like an Xbox Live arcade game that got it was like given us like a Games with Gold, so I got into it and then wrote a guide for it. But I've also worked with Maka 91 Productions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I've been working with him sometimes. It's sort of, not with any regularity, but I recorded the capture for a couple of the latest Call of Duty Zombies Easter eggs. So I did them, recorded them, and then he commentated over them and edited it and uploaded it. And then I also worked with him recently on Resident Evil 8 Mercenaries guides. So the Mercenaries S rank guides on his channel, I recorded the gameplay, and I also sent him. As I was playing, I wrote notes for like explaining why I was doing what I was doing and any advice that I have. And so I recorded those, sent them to him. He's uploaded them and commentated them and done an amazing job. So if anyone's interested in those, then they should, check them out. Or if they have any questions, I'm happy to help. I also think, I mean, I don't know. There's some guides for those mercenaries levels. I think Power Picks is one of them, where they have a totally different method for some of the levels, and I think their method is harder and worse because the good thing about the method that I used, and plenty of other people have used it. I didn't come up with it or anything. But you can do that method like every time if you're good enough at the game. It's not something where you have to rely on randomness or luck. It will work every time. There's RNG in Mercenaries no matter what. You can't avoid it. But even without the RNG, those guides should work. Whereas I think the Power Picks method and some other methods, they go mostly knife only. And to go knife only, you need to be able to get an orb early that like boosts your knife damage by 10 times. And it's like you have like a 12% chance to get that.
Oh shit.
In a given run. So I found that like motivated me to try and make a guide, because it's like I don't think this is the best way to do it really. But I've had feedback on that as well, because like you can choose whether to like upgrade your pistol or get the shotgun or get the rifle, and there's plenty of people who have done it so many different ways. So people should experiment and do whatever. So it was strange doing a guide for something that was more freeform, and there's like multiple ways to do it. But yeah, it was a really enjoyable experience, and I hope to make more guides in the future. Um, yeah, it's been great.
I'm really excited about that, and I'm definitely gonna support that whenever I get there in Mercenaries. I have not finished the campaign of Resident Evil 8. I'm pretty far into it. I'd say I'm over halfway. I usually do experiment with guides. Like I'll read Power Picks and I'll read PlayStation profiles, and I'll kind of see if they have different methods or if someone's better than the other. Or whenever I'm struggling on a trophy, I'll like go to specifically Google that trophy and then go to the forums and see like other people's strategies. And I'll definitely probably use Maka for that.
Yeah, his guides are always. I've been a huge fan of his work for a long time. So it was a really good opportunity. And yeah, it's like you say as well. Sometimes there's guides where they're not like better or worse, but just different people have different methods, and
Absolutely.
sometimes some just like work better for you. So I always find it useful to go to various sources. Maka, Power Picks, True Achievements, PSM profiles, stuff like that, and they'll sometimes they'll have different methods, and it can be like the third one that you read that is the one that really sticks out to you and saves a lot of time and headaches. So yeah, I definitely recommend doing that as well.
Yeah, and you were talking about stat tracking and true achievements, and I was going to specifically ask you about that because that's why I like to use I go straight to PSN profiles like every time, because I like whenever I get an achievement or a trophy and then I synchronize it and it shows me through the guide like what step 1 how many of the trophies I've gotten. It like highlights the ones that I have and the ones that I don't. And so whenever I finish phase 1, then it'll highlight like I'll start phase 2, and as I pop them it'll highlight them. So that's really really nice. Does True Achievements do that?
Yeah, so yeah, you synchronize it. There's like a button to refresh, and it will do it, and then it tells you which ones you have, which ones you don't have, and it also tells you the percentage of people who have an account on the website, how many of them have that achievement, and then it also tells you how many people on Xbox through Xbox's own stat tracking have that achievement, but also have the game. Obviously, it only counts people that have played the game. Because otherwise every achievement only like 0.1% of people would have them. But
Right.
yeah, so that's useful, but also it looks at like it gives you like personal graphs and stats and things and different value. It keeps track of like the best days you've ever had, like what day you've got like the most achievements in, or like what day you've got like the hardest achievements in, and then it can rank the games that you've played by their relative difficulty to complete, and the achievements you've got by their difficulty. Like, I don't know, like I remember for me, there's an achievement in Outlast and Outlast 2 to beat the whole game on the hardest difficulty, where if you die you have to start the game over, and to also do that without reloading the camera batteries, and the cameras are what you use to see in the dark in that game. So it's basically like beat the game without dying on the hardest difficulty, where you die in one hit, and also you can't use like the night vision for most of the game. And so like that achievement has like a really low unlock percentage, and it's also worth a lot of gamer scores. So the way they calculate it on the website, that achievement is considered really difficult and really rare. And so using their system, it will like highlight for you, it was really impressive that you got this achievement. And yeah, the website's great for all kinds of stats like that, so I can't recommend it enough.
That PSN profiles those two websites are structured almost identically. Like it's the same. Like where it shows how many, like what day of the week you get the most achievements. It tracks like how many trophies you get a day. It tracks your place in the world, which I used to want to be competitive in that, but the trophy system is so broken that like there's accounts where there's a team of people playing a game, like there's
The same profile.
yeah, they're all logged out of the profile, like not online, and they play the games and they get the platinums, and then they just sign into the profile and it dings all of the trophies for them, and there's 8 different people doing it, so it's like they get fucking 40 platinums a day, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, there's no way to keep up with that. There's no way to keep up with that. And so I just think that's completely broken, and I don't compete with it anymore, even though I like to see where I'm at in the world. Like, it's cool to look at. But yeah, I love the statistics and how it tracks it. Both of those websites are just absolutely the best of the best. You gotta go there if you're trophy hunting or achievement hunting. But
yeah, they're both fantastic. So I hope listeners use them.
I've only ever assisted in guides. Like there's a VR game called Moss, and I was the first to get all the collectibles. I was not the first to get the platinum. I was in like top 10 or something like that. And because I wanted to go to bed, it was like 3 a.m. and I needed to beat the game without dying, and I kept dying, and I was like, I'm just too tired and my reflexes are too slow. It's another one of those games where like you die in one hit. Well, you can die in one hit at the end. The rest of the game, you have a health bar. But I was like, okay, I could do it, but I need to be more awake and have better response times. And I just went to sleep, woke up, and I got the platinum first try. And so I was in the top 10. I could have been the first if I would have just stuck it through. And I had journalists reach out to me, and not dick journalists. They were pretty cool people. And they were like, hey, can you help us, with this and send us videos? And I was like, absolutely. Because I was the first to find all the collectibles, and I did that, and I remained friends with some of those people. And like, that was my only experience really with writing a guide or assisting in a guide. I almost got to write a review once for Bravo Team, I think, is a VR game, but I never did. I was in school and I was really busy. But that's about the extent of that, and I would say that would be the end of our podcast. We have kind of gone through everything we wanted to talk about, our history with trophy hunting and achievement hunting, and our experience with guides
generally.
Yeah, and our history. And what are you going to be playing this week?
Oh, so I've been playing Darkest Dungeon recently.
Oh, nice.
I'd watched people play it before, but I never got into it. But it got added to Game Pass recently, so on PC and console. So I've been checking that out and enjoying it. It's a pretty hardcore sort of strategy dungeon crawling type roguelike sort of game. So yeah, I highly recommend it, and I've been enjoying it, and I'm gonna keep going with it. What are you planning on playing?
I'm doing something I never usually do. I'm playing like 3 games at the same time. On my Vita on the go, I'm playing Persona 4 Golden. That's just kind of something fun that I'm chasing whenever I'm not home, and that's been going on for a long time because it's like 150 hours platinum, and I'm playing it in 30-minute bursts or whatever, and I'm like 25% on that, and I just started Resident Evil 8, and I'm really excited to get through that. I want to I'm really big on spoiler casts, so that's something that we might consider in the future, but kind of put our own twist on it where we're like talking about the journey of the completion of the game. And I want to just beat the campaign and then listen to some spoiler guides on it, or spoiler podcasts on it, so that I can like learn things, because that's usually what happens after I beat a game. Is like I'll learn things through other podcasts. Like they found a note or something that I didn't see, and I get more lore. After I'm hunting Resident Evil 8, I'm currently just trying to finish up Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the DLC. I've got the platinum. I just want to finish up the DLC, and I'm having a lot of fun with that DLC. It's really cool. There's like these challenge rooms, and I need to like get gold on all of them, and they're just little fun things. They're not like the most difficult thing in the world. If they were, I wouldn't do it, because I generally plan out my trophies by how long it's going to take, and if it's just like one trophy and it's going to take me like 10 to 15 hours, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I could start another game and get 50% through in 15 hours instead of spending for one trophy, spending that much time.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about those games next week or whenever too.
Absolutely. Do our updates.
Yeah, it'll be great.
And we'll be back next week. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.